3, 2, 1. Send us free stuff, Coke. That stuff we said about Pepsi in the last few videos, that's all lies, man. It's all you, baby.
It's literally a video like a week or two ago where you shit on Coke.
Yeah. You know what? I'm weak. Coke was on special this week, so that's what I bought. I'm so easy. Oh yeah, okay. I'm so easily swayed.
Please don't throw it.
It's getting thrown. Thing is though, you can tell that's my fridge because it's got Diet Coke and a Corona. There's nothing more depressing though when you go into a fridge and you see one beer. So that means you know I already drank all the rest of the beers. Right. Okay. There we go. The 2011 prequel to The Thing is a movie that bombed harder at the box office than a T-1000 into a pool full of mercury. A fact many attributed to the film's atrocious CGI, an element that was added later in production and, as it turns out, for the most stupid fucking reason ever.
So fans of the channel must have watched The Thing by now.
Yes, we've talked about it a lot, and it's one of my personal favourite movies of all time.
And new fans, go watch it, then come back.
Yeah, I think it's on Netflix right now if you're in the UK. Go watch The fucking Thing. That film is amazing, and if you've not seen it, it's famous for its practical effects, because I think it's Rob Bottin worked on that movie, and the story is he is a special effects fucking wizard. He's the guy who made the RoboCop suit. If you know, I think he did all the extra background stuff in the cantina scene of Star Wars, and I believe he also played the tallest guy in the cantina band.
Yeah.
He wore the mask there because obviously he was given a little cameo for all his work on it. Right? And the story is that he slept under his fucking desk at the studio, making all the effects for the movie. And he would call up John Carpenter going, I've got a fucking disgusting idea. You're going to hate it. It's awesome. And he's quite a private person, but you can tell in the few interviews he's given about The Thing, he fucking loves his job. He's just one of those people where just his enthusiasm just shines through. He fucking loved making these weird, horrible creatures. And that's why he worked so hard. Because he was like, you know what? Yeah. So I think John Carpenter just told him, look, this thing can look like fucking anything, so just go nuts. And he fucking did.
Before we get on to a little bit further on, what's your favourite?
The practical effects in the film. I think it's the dog thing, because I watched it I watched the director's commentary on The Thing a while back, and it was pointed out by I think Rob Bottin or John Carpenter that all the little details that he put in that no one noticed, because I've only ever watched a really bad quality DVD version. I finally got on Blu-ray. And I watched it and they say, oh yeah, if you look, it opens like a flower. And if you pay attention, that instead of petals, it has tongues. It's the dog tongues.
Oh.
Yeah. And that to me is amazing because it means that effort was put in. He could have just made it look like this disgusting monstrosity. No, thought and care went into what it would look like. And the explanation is the thing doesn't quite know what form to take yet. And because it's gained so much biomass from all the dogs it's just absorbed, it kind of just makes a mess. But even then, there's beauty in the horror there.
Yeah.
Because obviously it opens like a flower, which is like nature, organic, but it's made of tongues. It's oh, and put that scene in, zoom in. She's sitting, it's like a blink and you miss it shot. But it's a detail that Rob Bottin's no, this is going to make people feel really fucking uneasy.
I think mine's got to be the bit where it's like the guy's head sort of rises from the table with the
that's the famous shot, yeah.
And the head turns around and looks at everyone. It's what the fuck am I looking at?
That's my favourite form of The Thing, but in terms of the practical effects, I think my favourite one in the film is the one because it's known as the effect that no one could figure out how they did it. And that's when you know it's a fucking good effect. And it's where R.J. McCready, like Kurt Russell, he puts the hot needle into the blood and it just leaps out of the sky. And for years, people couldn't figure out how they did that. And it turns out it's played in reverse.
I was going to say that's probably how I would have done it.
It's played in reverse. But if you watch the scene back, you'll notice that Kurt Russell's hand doesn't move. And that's because it's a fake hand.
Oh.
It's a fake hand with all the mechanism hidden in the hand. Yeah. But it's framed in such a way that it looks real. And because they keep cutting back to it, you don't notice. And now I know that. Every time I watch that scene, I know that's not a real hand because it's not moving.
So I'd assume that it was a creature made so that when you pulled a string, it folded back into a petri dish, or presumably into the arm.
Yes, it's all hidden in the arm.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's one of those effects that years later, people experts in the field couldn't figure out how they did it, and that to me is the epitome. That's what practical effects can achieve, and effects that even people who know how it works don't know how it fucking works.
Practical effects, they need a lot of appreciation for how they achieve some of these things. We've talked a little bit about it before, but in American Werewolf in London.
Oh, that's the famous one,
with
yeah.
The transformation scene where they managed to make it look like the bones and things are stretching.
Yeah, and then you got the Foley artist working fucking overtime on that movie, man.
They had to make like artificial limbs and pieces of its body for every single shot. Like, each one is
or in regards to The Thing, the famous defibrillator scene where the guy's arms get cut off, that's an actor who has no arms. Like there's a guy with no arms they brought in, and they made like fake arms with plastic, and then they just rip them off, and he's walking around with no arms. And it looks real because the guy has no fucking arms.
I think if they get the paraplegic without the arms, they put the mask of the guy on him so it looks like it's that guy.
Yeah, that's why you don't see it. And then again, the fact they put the mask on, and the mask itself looks super realistic and you don't notice it.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of practical effects. Like if with good editing and good sound work, you can make people believe fucking anything. In that moment, you believe that guy had his arms ripped off. And it's not. It's the guy with no arms wearing a mask of that dude. And that's brilliant. That's amazing. I love that shit. Or I think the only effect in the movie that doesn't really hold up is the shot immediately after that is the dummy shot of the guy who gets his head caught in the thing and they swing it around. It's like, oh god. If that shot wasn't in the movie, I'd say it's close to perfect. That's the only effect that doesn't hold up because it looks so fucking stupid.
Yeah, before we continue, we understand that a few of these effects probably might look a bit dated because it was made in the 80s.
But at the same time, because they exist and the actors are reacting to something that physically existed on set at the time, I think it has more charm to it. And the example I always like to use is the one in Transformers, where Optimus Prime or some shit kicks his way into a building and fires a gun into the air, and one of the extras misses his mark. So he doesn't react at all to a giant 40-ton robot drop-kicking its way into the room. And it just looks stupid. You can put it in, you can zoom in on the guy. And like, if that was a practical effect, that guy would shit his pants. And the example I like to use for that is Inception. Do you know the scene where basically the entire world explodes?
Yeah.
That's real. They actually just exploded the set around Leonardo DiCaprio, and his reaction is genuine. Or like a less impressive example, something similar is Paranormal Activity, where all the cupboards explode at once. Again, a practical effect that the actress in the scene didn't know about, so her reaction again is genuine.
Well, since we're talking about practical effects and getting a genuine reaction from your cast, we can't not mention the chest burst scene.
Yeah, oh god, which you're going to put in because that clip's amazing. And if you're wondering why that lady is freaking her shit so much, it's because, one, they didn't know how good an actor John Hurt was, and two, they didn't know what the alien looked like. And the story behind it is only 3 people knew what was going to happen. And the way it worked is they put the actor's head through a table and then put a fake chest here. And then I think the alien is just someone's hand. It's literally just someone putting a hand puppet through the table or some shit like that. But they didn't know how much blood there was going to be. So again, that reaction is 100% genuine. And it makes the film better. Because obviously like you feel the fear and the surprise and the shock. Because it's fucking real. Like that one, oh god, it's the classic.
It upsets me that scenes like that and like The Thing, I can't experience them for the first time.
Oh yeah,
because I'd seen those clips before I watched the film.
Yeah, exactly.
But in particular, The Thing, like if you haven't seen The Thing and you don't know how it like goes through and ends, go watch it before we talk about it.
It's fucking amazing.
Because The Thing is one of those ones that's got like. The end is fantastic. Everything that goes through it is fantastic.
And it's a film that you look at and go, it couldn't be made today, as evidenced by the fact that the prequel is so terrible, which we'll talk about now.
So the prequel of The Thing, which is called
The Thing.
The Thing.
And do you know the story behind that? Apparently they were brainstorming ideas and they said, well, there's no name better than The Thing. And if we put a subtitle on it, it just sounds stupid. Because everything like The Thing, like Reborn or some shit. So they said, just call it The Thing. And apparently that's the same process they went through when they made the 1982 The Thing, when they were brainstorming ideas for a name for the movie or a name for the titular alien, and they couldn't think of anything better than just The Thing, because the movie, it's a rough kind of remix. It's not an original film, it's a remake of Thing from Another World.
Well, they're very different, I think. I think
yeah,
Thing from Another World was based...
The story is similar, but I consider it's its own thing.
Yeah.
Thing, because obviously the adaptation is so different from the original story. But because you always get that smarmy person. Well, actually, it wasn't an original movie. There was another movie it's based on, which instead of a giant shape-shifting alien, it's a weird man with a pale face.
It's like a plant monster, isn't it?
It's a man. It's a man in a suit. It's literally just a dude who breaks through a cardboard set. But we need to say it because someone in the comments will be like, "Well, it's not really. It's based on The Thing from Another World from the 1950s." Like, I fucking know it is.
But yeah, so the thing, it was 2011.
Yes.
So I assume they were going to use CG from the start.
No, they weren't. And you can find interviews with virtually everyone involved with production up until the movie got released saying, yeah, of course we're going to use practical effects. This is a prequel to a movie famous for its phenomenal practical effects. Of course we're going to pay homage to that with our own take on the thing using practical effects. And I think the screenwriter for the film categorically refused to work on it if it was going to contain CGI. He went in and said, I'm not going to write your fucking script if this is a CGI clusterfuck. Like, put some respect on John Carpenter's work, man. It's got to be practical effects. Yeah. And the studio apparently afterwards congratulated him on the size of his balls for doing that, because they was like, we're really surprised you took that stand, but we're happy that you did. You've got some big fucking balls, dude. Like, to turn down potentially a lucrative job like this, and to have your name attached at the time, what's going to be a very high-profile feature, because you believe so much that practical effects were that integral to the success of the original. Which is funny, because the original was really bad. It's not really, but it was really badly received.
Well received initially, wasn't it?
Yes, and you can go and find the famous review from the New York Times. They called it an instant junk. Because nobody liked it, because the ending was really depressing, and obviously the practical effects were so disgusting at the time.
I think E.T. had wrecked it, didn't it?
No, that John Carpenter blamed it on E.T.
Yeah.
Because John Carpenter famously said that's stupid, because people went and watched E.T., which is a movie about a happy alien coming to Earth for benign reasons, and then they go watch my movie. And it was mauled critically.
Yeah.
And John Carpenter was really upset by it. And it made him seriously depressed for a couple of months. Obviously, he poured his heart and soul into that movie, and everyone shit on it. And now it's a cult classic. That's because it's one of the greatest examples of horror ever made.
Yeah.
So just proving that critics don't know jack.
So the screenwriter demanded practical effects.
Yes, he refused to write the script if there was going to be CGI in it.
Well, I've seen the shitstorm that is the final piece.
Oh yeah, the terrible, terrible CGI, which there'll be many clips of.
How far through production did they use practical effects?
All the way. There is a cut of the movie that contains practical effects. Obviously, it's not finished because they were going to use CGI for what I believe CGI should be used for, and that's just finishing up. Just remove wires, add a bit of blood here. I think one of the things they said, add more tentacles to the thing, is what they were going. The screenwriter said, the only excuse I'll use for CGI is add more tentacles. That's the only reason you can do it. Which when you're making a Thing movie, always add more tentacles. There is never enough tentacles on the thing. I agree with that, because one of the most unsettling effects in the 1982 movie is when the Thing opens up and all the hundreds of gooey yellow tentacles just fly out. It's flopping all over the joint. That always freaked me out as a kid, because it just moves in such an unnatural way. It's just so erratic in its movement, it terrifies me. It's like when the spider thing starts crawling on the floor. That's a real fucking model, man. I would be scared of that thing. And then when it starts running around on fire, dude, man, you don't need that shit. It's terrifying.
There's also when the guy drops to his knees in the snow.
Yeah, and he's half transformed, and that's when they realise the Thing can take the form of anybody. And that always scared me, and that's the sound designers there who was working overtime on that bad boy. Because the scream that he does, the ungodly, just guttural moan, and it's fuck. And that's when you realise the Thing can speak. I think the explanation for that is its vocal cords aren't fully formed yet, 'cause it's halfway through transforming, and that's why it can't talk. Yeah. And just so what you get is just this inhuman guttural wailing. And if we're going to talk about that, there is one example that I want you to put into. Maybe you've not seen it. People might not have. Is the film Annihilation. Have you seen this?
I don't think I have.
There is a famous scene in Annihilation where it's the idea is there's a weird orb, and animals are getting basically stuck together. And there's a scene in that movie where there's a bear that is half joined with a human, and it has a human skull on it. And it comes in, and you can hear the person inside it screaming the entire time it's on screen, because obviously there is a person trapped inside this horrible bear monster. So instead of growling, it just screams.
So this film has a monster that's half bear and half man.
Yeah.
What if it was also half pig?
You just ruined it. You made it not cool. God damn it. Fuck's sake.
Better get Al Gore on.
Are you going to splice those two clips together now? This really tense, awesome practical effect with like phenomenal sound design, and he's going to put man, bear, pig, yeah,
Excelsior.
It's like, in retrospect, is that like the most arsey thing South Park's ever done? Making fun of a guy trying to fix climate change.
They backtracked.
They better fucking have done.
They made an episode in one of the latest seasons where Man Bear Pig returns and he's destroying things, and they have to go to Al Gore and they have to apologise to Al Gore. He refuses to help unless they apologise. Yeah. So he was like, "I was right all along. How dare you?"
Yeah. You know what? Fair enough.
So a full practical cut of this film does exist.
Somewhere out there, yes.
Does that mean that, like, throughout the entire production, everybody was like, the CG was never an intention for the creature?
No, and everybody working on the film, from like the actors all the way up to, like I said, the screenwriter, the director, initially, and the producers, were like, yeah, of course it's going to be practical effects. Like, The Thing it's a classic. Of course, we've got to pay as much respect to this thing as we can. And I think the best example of that respect being shown is the fact that originally it was going to be a remake of the 1982 one, but no one wanted to touch it. No one working in Hollywood, no screenwriter, no director, no producer wanted to touch a remake. And I think someone working on it said, well, why would you remake The Thing? It's pretty much close to perfect. That'd be like drawing a mustache on the Mona Lisa. So the only reason it's a prequel is so it didn't touch the movie itself, so they could leave it as its own standalone thing. Because they said, we can't do a sequel because the sequel ruins the ending. So we can't do a remake, so we can only really make a prequel. And the prequel ends where the original one starts.
I never liked the idea of them doing a prequel though, because like if you've seen the original,
well,
you know how it ends. Yeah, the stakes are gone.
That's what I mean, but you know how it ends. But at the same time, you get to see the explanation for how, when they go to the research base and you find it destroyed, how did it get like this? And that's what the people working on the movie were most intrigued by. So they went, yeah, you know the ending, everybody fucking dies, but have you ever wondered, like, where did the axe in the wall come from? Which is a famous one. So if people don't know the story of The Thing, quickly, it's a evil alien Arctic research base, and the prequel is the people who found the alien originally. Because in the original Thing, 1982 one, they go to this burned out base and go, what the fuck happened here? And then the Thing attacks them. And then the prequel is, oh god, here's what happened. Everything just went wrong forever. And what they did is they watched the movie and went through it with a fine-tooth comb and noted every single thing in that movie. Okay, make note of that. We've got to explain where that comes from. And they had pictures of the original movie all around set to ensure absolute consistency between the two.
Like literally every single feature. Like if there's a crack in a wall
or a
table, that needs a reason.
I think the only thing they said we can't really do, or we can't like bullshit an explanation for, is when they find the thing in a block of ice, because the block of ice is like perfectly square in the 1982 movie. And they said that's not really how the ice would come out, so we can't really do that. But we're hoping people will forgive us for that because we paid so much attention everywhere else. And then they ruined it.
So who was responsible for the practical effects that would have been in the prequel?
That would be Amalgamated Dynamics, who were, like everybody fucking else working on the movie, like, that movie is a classic. Half of us do this for a living because we watched that movie as a kid and thought it was baller as fuck. We are going to try our hardest to, make our own version of The Thing that looks halfway as good as what they managed to pull off in the fucking 80s. We are going to use the full extent of the technological advancements we've made in the 30 years since that movie came out to really show people what The Thing can do. And they pull some amazing stuff out of their arse for that movie, and it's a damn shame we'll never actually get to see it on the big screen the way they wanted us to.
Yeah, we briefly covered this in a previous Thing video.
Yes.
And I watched through all of those. It's so amazing. Like the quality of the practical effects is incredible.
Oh yeah, and it's just, I felt so bad for the guys who made it.
I feel so sorry for them.
Do you know why? Because they didn't know that they got replaced with CGI until they watched the premiere. They didn't know. They went to the premiere and then all their effects had been just CGI'd over. Because let's get to that. So you're probably thinking, if every single person involved with the production was on board with practical effects, why does the movie have CGI in it? Well, that's because the studio didn't like the practical effects.
Of course,
yeah, it was studio fucking interference strikes again. And the story goes that the studio originally on board with practical effects, obviously, well, that's the original, everyone wants to do this. They watched an early cut and said, we don't like the effects, they don't look very good. And then the director, and this is amazing, had an interview where he had to defend the decision to replace all the effects with CGI. And you can tell he's sat there contemplating, do I really want my paycheck this much? And he goes, yeah, we've got to use CGI now, and I kind of have to agree with the studio because the effects made the movie look like it was made in the 80s.
That was the fucking point!
I was waiting for your reaction on that one, because that, for me, is the most brilliant fucking excuse. Like, this is a prequel to a movie made in the 80s, and we want to ensure absolute consistency between the two. And the leading complaint from the studios, it looks too much like an 80s movie. It's a prequel to an 80s movie.
We want to make a prequel that is basically reflects the original.
Yeah.
But it's too much like the original, so we'll make it shit instead.
And the director had to sit there and frame that as a negative. It's like, oh, it looks too much like an 80s movie. It is an 80s movie. You want to ensure consistency between the two products. Like, it looks like a fucking... Oh, it's so bad. And here's where things get amazing. Because, as I said, there was a practical cut of the movie. The movie was pretty much done. The only thing they needed to do was use CGI to add more tentacles and, remove some wires and just, add a little few things here and there to finish off the movie. And this is the version the studio saw. And they said, no, use CGI to replace everything. And because all the practical effects were done, what the company they brought in to fix the movie with CGI did is just CGI'd over the practical effects, which is why they ended up looking so bad.
And the guys who did the Magma Dynamics who did it didn't know until the premiere.
They didn't know. They went.
How insulting is that?
Yeah, they went to the premiere and saw that all their work had been literally just CGI'd over. And it's poetic in a way that they started out with the best possible intention of this movie, and they said, we don't want to draw a mustache on the Mona Lisa. We want to pay as much respect to the original as we can. We want to respect the original vision of the creator. And they just CGI'd over the people they brought in to realise the most important aspect of the movie, and then invited them to premiere and made them watch it. By now, you've probably already put in the clip of the original practical effects, but let's just zero in on one in particular so you can see how good these practical effects would have looked, and you get an idea of how fucking good they would have been, people at home. And it is the final thing that you get to see in the movie, and that's where the guy on the helicopter just splits in half and attacks the helicopter pilot. And originally, that was a actual real practical effect with a real guy in a costume where his head just and body just split apart. And they were going to use CGI to obviously add more tentacles and enhance that scene. But that was a real effect they managed to achieve, and they just CGI'd over it. And it just looks so bad because his face just falls apart. It doesn't look real.
I guess it would be slightly forgiven if it was at least decent quality CGI.
No, it couldn't have been because the CGI, they had to stick within the constraints of what was already on screen. So they had to, and what they ended up doing is making something that looked worse. I would argue that the unfinished practical effects look better than the final CGI product, just because there's some craft there. Whereas the CGI, it's a last minute slap. That it was done last fucking minute. It's straight to DVD quality. I think one of the leading complaints was it's not just that they use CGI, it's that it's bad CGI. Because it is. It's so terrible. We shit on the Transformers movies all the time, in this video in fact, but at least that looks good because they made those movies with that in mind from the outset. This was very clearly done at the last possible moment, and it shows, because the final product just doesn't have the same level of quality or craft as the original or the effects they were going to use.
It's not the bad CGI that gets to me the most. As an editor and visual effects artist, if I spend so much time working on that practical effect, and I get that they use CG to complement practical effects.
And the practical effects artists were happy with that because they said, yeah, sure, there's stuff you can't do safely or realistically with practical effects. Of course, use CGI at that point.
Or stuff that the original thing may have used had the technology existed back then.
Yes.
Adding in, like you said, more tentacles, a bit of extra goo, more blood.
Yeah, and as well, it lets you be more adventurous with your rigs, your practical effects, because you now have the added benefit of remove wires and things like that, so you can make more elaborate effects. An example of that I like to use that we mentioned on the channel before is Mad Max Fury Road, where you've put in clips before, haven't you, of showing that here is an actual car crashing for real, and then here's the final cut where they just added more explosions and fire and shit like that. And there's a great story behind the scenes of, and you know the people on the big sticks who go between the cars?
Yeah.
That was originally going to be CGI because they couldn't figure out a way to realise it safely. And George Miller was really annoyed about it. It's fine, if it'd kill the people doing it, I guess we can use CGI. But then they tracked down people from Cirque du Soleil who said, no, we can do it. Yeah. We can do it, let us in. Let us give it a go. And he went, okay, cool, bring them in.
There is also a shot where Tom Hardy is on one of those.
Yes, I fucking love that because Tom Hardy's I'll do it. Yeah. But originally they weren't going to have that in, or they were going to use CGI to realise it because they told George Miller it can't be done because you will kill the people doing it. And then someone from the circuit just like, no, we could do it. Give us, like, let us in, coach. We can pull it off. We'll get that 3-pointer. He's like, you know what? Go for it. And the final product looks phenomenal because of it.
Amalgamated Dynamics must have been pissed.
Oh, they were. And the thing that was most annoying for them is that's not the first time that's happened. They said, we've worked on loads of movies, and like we did with The Thing, we went to the premiere and saw that all of our work had either been removed or just covered with CGI. And that's really disheartening. And the reason that we have the videos and the clips we put in today showing the practical effects is because they released them on YouTube, because they were getting criticised. Like, well, you were working on this movie, why are there so few practical? No, we made them all. Here's the proof. It's the studio who fucked us over. And they got so annoyed that they went out and they made their own film, which is basically just a retread of The Thing using nothing but practical effects called Harbinger Down. And it didn't exactly set the box office on fire. And I think it's like 45% or something on Rotten Tomatoes. So not really a critical darling. But I'd like to point out, it does have better ratings than the 2011 prequel to The Thing. So fuck you, movie studios. At the very least, it'd got you an extra 6% on Rotten Tomatoes. And also, we won't be shitting on it in this video.
I think it's unfair that people shit on CGI too much, because when it's used perfectly,
competently,
when it complements a scene, that's when it's like that's where its use should really come in.
Well, it's another tool, and you can't blame filmmakers for using it. And do you know what really annoys me about all this? Practical effects are by and large cheaper than CGI. The only problem is, obviously, a practical effect, you can only really film it from one way, whereas with CGI in post-production, you can tweak the scene however the fuck you want.
There's a famous example I remember from when I was at university where there was basically a photo of a car on a hill.
Oh, yes.
And that was it. And my tutor said, this is CG.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Like have you seen the rig that they used to do it? This will be a fun fact for people at home. All car adverts don't use the real car. Because the car, when they make the advert, the car doesn't exist yet, or the car's not finished. So what they do is they have this, it's basically a cube.
Yeah, it's like 4 wheels.
Yeah, it's 4 wheels, and you can just model whatever the fuck you want over the top of it. And you can put a clip of it in, because it's really cool. Because it's just like this weird cube car, and they just CGI whatever the fuck you want over the top. So they just drive that around scenic locations, and then go to car companies and go, do you want us to just CGI your new fucking Mazda onto this shit? And they do. It's really cool. I like that.
But with this image of the car that I mentioned, the reason why it's fascinating is because I said to my tutor, why? Why spend all this money making a computer-generated car and putting it on a hill when you can drive the car to a hill and take a picture?
Because you can edit the image however you want.
Yeah, because if the people come back and say, we want a slightly different angle, you then have to go back out and take
Exactly, yeah. So it would be cheaper to do it the one time, but if you want to tweak and manipulate the image like ad nauseum, it does make sense to use CGI, but it's just annoying that that's the case. We touched upon it briefly when we discussed Doctor Strange, where they destroyed a real $200,000 Lamborghini, because the Lamborghini's like, fuck it, yeah, go on, you can have one. And the director's like, oh, cool. In which case, then just blow it the fuck up. And that would be usually something they'd accomplish with CGI, because most car manufacturers wouldn't give you 7 cars to destroy. But Lamborghini's like, fuck it, who gives a shit?
While we're talking CG and visual effects as well,
yes,
I'm going to raise a cup to roto artists.
Roto artists?
Yeah, so rotoscoping is where you go through frame by frame.
Ah, yes.
So these are the people, the heroes, who have to go through like minutes of footage.
Oh, and they have every single frame, remove like the wires from the frame.
Heroes.
Yeah, I remember that's how they did the effects in Tron. To the original Tron, they just went through frame by frame and just drew the glowy thing over the top.
The original lightsabers were the same.
Yeah, and there's a fun fact about that as well, where when that movie came out, they didn't let them put it forward for an Oscar for Best Visual Effects, because they said CGI was cheating. Even though it didn't use CGI, that was done by rotoscoping. But they said, no, you can't put it forward for an Oscar for Best Effects, because with CGI, it's cheating. Now look at what we've got.
But while we're talking Tron and CGI, did you know Tron is the first ever film to include a CGI character?
I thought that was Lawnmower Man.
Is it?
I don't know.
There's a weird shape in it that moves, and apparently I think it speaks. But as far as I'm aware, that's the first example.
Oh, fair enough. I always assumed it was like that. Is the Knight in one of the films? The example people always bring up.
Yeah, I mean actual computer-generated
one that speaks
models.
With. Okay.
Yeah.
God,
rather than.
Well, they did that. That's how they got the all the glowy blue lines over everything. They went through frame by frame and drew it over the top, and that's amazing to me, because that must have taken so fucking long to do. And as well, apparently Jeff Bridges is like, I hated that costume. It strangled my nutsack. It's awful, man.
That's fine. It's like in the sequel, they're just CG'd in young.
Yeah, oh god, that was a good effect. I like that. Young Jeff Bridges, man. But
it was a little bit choppy, but it was early days of that.
It was, and it established that it worked, and you get away with it in the Tron movie using loads of CGI because it's Tron. You're inside a digital world. But since we're talking about it, let's talk about some good CGI, because we mentioned like Mad Max Fury Road used to complement the action. So any examples in your head, so we're not just spending the entire time crapping all over it?
I'm going to say just set extensions in general. So when they add cities in the background, or Mad Max, where they add like extra desert, they remove those kind of things are like almost always seamless.
Yeah.
Unless it's like, the prequels.
And originally that would have been like matte paintings and stuff, which I still think look better.
Matte paintings are fantastic.
Yeah, there's a really good one in The Thing, where the 1982 one, where they first come across the crashed alien spaceship, and they just have that beautiful matte paintings. And Star Wars again, Hoth, that was all matte paintings. But again, that you can just do CGI for that now.
Well, the way they used to do those was they'd paint it onto glass.
Yes.
And have this projection.
I love that.
It's fascinating.
My favourite one, though, and the one that no one ever realises, is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Do you know the big warehouse full of boxes? Yeah. That's just a corridor, and it's a map. All the boxes on the side are matte paintings, and you don't know. You put that clip in, and I tell people that's a painting. No, it's not. It's a real location. Well, no, it's not. What location has that many boxes? It's a painting. That's how good it is.
I think there was like one or two guys who did them all.
Oh yeah,
amazing.
Back in the day,
I don't know the names, but I wish I did.
Well, look them up and put them below. Like big dick fucking ballers, but all of them.
Credit to those people who can paint realistic locations with perspective.
And again, that's cheaper than CGI. The problem is though, like that scene in Indiana Jones, you can only do it from one angle. So if you wanted to say, okay, we want another shot, they'd have to go do another painting, and then it starts getting more expensive. But that to me is fantastic, man. That's awesome.
The use of CGI.
We're talking about CGI, we immediately go to like a practical effects. It's so much cooler. It's more impressive.
Yeah.
It's cheaper and it looks better. I don't understand. It's like when they blow up cars and stuff in movies. Like most of the time it's cheaper to just get a real car and crash that shit. It's like the Blues Brothers was famous for it. And I'm still annoyed to this day because Blues Brothers held a record for a while for the most cars destroyed in a movie. And all the police cars in the final scene, they said like what we had is just a rolling workshop where it was the same cars kept getting crashed over and over and over again. And we'd bring them in after they crashed, they'd get fixed back up and sent back out to crash again. And do you know what movie took the crown from the Blues Brothers?
Was it Need for Speed?
No, it was G.I. Joe.
Really?
Yeah, one of the G.I. Joe movies destroyed more cars. And Blues Brothers is still remembered to this day for that car chase. Who the fuck remembers G.I. Joe? I'm going to talk about good CGI, the granddaddy of them all, Jurassic Park, which I found out recently, which blew my mind, was like 14 minutes of dinosaurs in that movie, and I think 7 of them are CGI dinosaurs. The famous one being like the T-Rex roaring at the very start in the rain. Apparently, like every second, that cost like an extra like $9,000 for every second they filmed because it was in the rain, and it added like rendering time.
Oh
but
man,
you know what?
There's so many funny stories about that. Like the fact they were like, "Oh, we want to set it in the rain at night." They made the animatronic, and the animatronic wasn't designed to get wet.
Yeah.
Let's keep drying it out.
And did you hear as well that it would shake uncontrollably every now and again? So it sounded like it was sneezing. Again, we're talking about the practical effects of the play, but they combine them and it works.
I think in the original Jurassic Park, the only CG effect I think doesn't stand up at the moment
is the very opening scene
with the brachiosaur.
Yeah, it's the only one that doesn't hold
up.
That's
obviously because like this, they wouldn't have had the technology to do with like really detailed.
And as well,
that thing's huge.
Yeah, and Alan Grant doesn't react to it properly because he walks like 4 foot away from a 90-ton, 300-foot tall dinosaur when realistically you'd be wary of being near it.
Alan Grant, dinosaur expert.
It's a dinosaur. It's like, no, it's not. So good. Tennis balls on stick, baby. That's still my favourite thing. Like the best thing about CGI is watching behind the scenes footage without the CGI added, like the Twilight one. Yeah. Of whenever Bella is petting a wolf, she's just petting a guy in a wolf suit. And there's all the behind the scenes shots of just a guy putting his head in a lap. It's like, he got paid to do that.
I remember watching the extended editions of Lord of the Rings, and in the troll fight, it was the cave troll fight. That was like a huge thing on a stick, so they knew where to go for the head.
Tennis, so it's always a tennis ball on a stick,
all these
isn't it?
heroes running away from this like thing on a stick.
The guy with a stick. It's like a board with a nail in it. It's one step removed from that. If you're going to talk about Lord of the Rings, though, you have to go, again, a film known for its practical effects. I think they actually had an armoury making armour for all the orcs. Then you go straight to fucking The Hobbit, which made Ian McKellen cry because he was on a set on his own, surrounded by tennis balls, and he burst into tears going, "This isn't why I got into acting."
Yeah,
it's like, no!
It's so weird that people, you'd think that we wouldn't go backwards. Because obviously, if you look at Lord of the Rings and you get to see the practical effect of
that's what baffles me about
the distance between the hobbits and...
Do you know why? Because, again, it would have been cheaper to do practical effects, but it was quicker to do CGI. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake. Because the shot I always bring up, and I'll mention it every time, is the elf shot, where it's 1,000 CGI elves that all look identical and all move the same way, which is just so... And it's so obvious. You could have just hired, just get 40 extras and dress them up.
And just put them in multiple times with a camera on a repeat.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do with crowd shots. You usually have to populate the back of the crowd. One of my favourite ones when they just use cardboard cutouts. Have you ever seen that? I think when they use cardboard cutouts to fill out crowd scenes, because that's also cheaper.
Oh.
And I think my favourite film like is Goon. Have you seen it? With Sean William Scott, who plays he's like an ice hockey player. For the crowd shots, they're just all cardboard. And if you look in the background, it's just big cardboard people. Or when we talked about in The Matrix, the Burley Brawl, some of the people are just mannequins with Hugo Weaving faces on, and there's a shot where you see the mannequins fall over. And it's in the final shot of the movie. But you don't notice it until someone like me points it out, and then you go watch it, and you go, oh yeah, there's mannequins falling over. Because didn't you manage to get a shot of a slow motion mannequin just falling over, and the mask looks really bad? Because the quality of the Hugo Weaving mask gets worse the further back you go. Oh man!
Something I learned recently about Thanos.
Okay.
So a fantastic bit of CG captured all of the movement of
Josh Brolin. Yeah, Brolin was on set doing all the movements.
Something I discovered is in close-up shots they have a different CG model for Thanos than further away
because it's got more detail. I think he even has a little bit of stubble, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. He's got stubble on his top lip, and but it's I love that, the fact that they were like, we want to make one that will go perfect.
Well, that's why. Well, that's why it looks good, because they went, you know what? We've got that big dick Marvel money. We can do whatever the fuck we want. We can make a purple nutsack man look good.
I also love the fact that if they've done that for him, they must have done it for other parts of his body.
Oh yeah.
So if you ever did a close-up of him, with his, they'd have to do a really, really detailed hand.
Yeah. Well, the gauntlet was real, wasn't it? That was a real effect. That was a real thing they made. And it weighed a ton apparently, which was like metal, which I think is great. I hope Peter Dinklage helped make it. Is that the greatest piece of casting in cinema? You get Peter Dinklage, but you make him giant. Which I remember howling at that scene. The fact that it's just a giant Peter Dinklage is yes! So good. He's been in 2 Marvel movies now. So he was Oliver Trask.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, the completely meaningless villain who does nothing in that X-Men universe. And then he's like, no, what? No, I fought Stormbreaker, baby.
But it's there's 2 Oliver Trasks in that universe. Yeah. And one of them is a 6-foot black guy.
And one of them is Peter Dinklage. He went through a white guy. He went through a lot of puberty. That's all I got to say. But I love that scene as well, because it was pointed out to me after the fact the reason Stormbreaker is so OP is because now it's been imbued with Thor's godly essence. Because when he's doing the man shot of holding apart the sun, it blasts his own godhood into the weapon, which is why obviously people have got to be worthy to wield it. Because he's now got the Odin Force as part of him, because he's now Odin, effectively. So the Odin Force is in Stormbreaker. It's yes!
I didn't think Stormbreaker held the same properties as Mjolnir.
It's not imbued to be worthy or anything, but he's got the Odin Force in it, because when the light goes through, you see the energy coming from Thor, which imbues... It's that's such a neat detail. Or have you ever done the thing where you rewatch Infinity War and keep an eye on Thanos, and you'll notice that he's constantly using all of the stones, even when it's not really shown off. When he teleports away, you see him using the time stone to heal his wound. Or when he's fighting Doctor Strange, he uses the Soul Stone to detect which one's the real Doctor Strange. He uses the Power Stone to punch through the mirror dimension. All that shit's great. I love it.
Is the reason he was able to fight the Hulk toe-to-toe because he was using the Power Stone?
No, he's as strong as the Hulk.
He's just as strong as the Hulk.
Yeah, he's as strong. That's why he beats him hand to hand.
Yeah.
To show that he can. Because I think the Russo brothers... They were asked why didn't Doctor Strange cut his hand off? And they explained that his skin's super tough. He'd try to cut the Hulk's hand off. He's just super, super strong. And that's why you need like something like Stormbreaker to hurt him. You need like this god weapon to do any damage to him whatsoever.
This thing is going to come out in a month's time. I'm probably calling this out, but that's the Infinity War and Endgame. When you just watch
the money, the amount of money.
But no, when they just hacked his hand off.
Oh yeah, immediately.
I was like, holy shit! I was not expecting that stuff.
Immediately, like for the first 10 minutes of the movie, main villain dead. Great.
It was so unexpected.
That takes, do you know what that takes? That takes big dick Disney money to pull off.